You're listening to the Talkative Toastmaster podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Surplus. In this podcast, we explore how Toastmasters can help you to polish your public speaking skills, communicate with confidence, and amplify your authenticity. You'll hear from my fellow Toastmasters and I how this global organisation has impacted our lives for the better and how it could impact yours. Now, let's get talkative. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 11 of the Talkative Toastmaster podcast. Today I'm joined by my guest and fellow Toastmaster, Thomas Krafft. Thomas joined Toastmasters at age 18 after attending every meeting of his local club with his dad for 18 months. He earned his DTM at age 25, and over a decade after joining, he's now been a president of 5 clubs, area director 3 times, and Eastern Division director. Thomas is currently the District 69 Public Relations Manager and says he doesn't have much time for other hobbies. Phew, I'm exhausted just thinking about all of that. Thomas, welcome to the show.
G'day, thanks for having me on.
You sound like you're a very busy Toastmaster.
It's fine. I didn't do any Toastmasters work on Saturday. We're recording on Monday. It's fine.
Yes.
No, I don't do things by halves. It's half my problem.
I'm looking forward to diving into some of the vast experience you have, but how about we start by you telling us which clubs you're a member of?
Oh, yeah. So I'm a member. My local club is Down Under Club. Meets in Rochdale in Logan. And my second club, I'm a member of 2 clubs, don't judge me, I'm a tragic, is Leading Edge, which is an advanced club, which meets in Carindale. Okay,
and we'll get to the 2 club situation in a sec, but what made you first decide to join Toastmasters?
Yeah, so I originally joined, it was a different club. That club has now since shut down, which makes me a bit sad. But kind of like you said, I joined when I was 18. I'd been going along for some time. Like I was 16 at the time, right? So I was still living with my parents. And it was my dad had said something to me about he was going off to Toastmasters to check out whatever it is that they do. Because I have a much older sister. And he was looking down the barrel of having to give a speech at a wedding. And it terrified him, sort of semi-unbeknownst to me. And for some reason, I decided to go along and check it out as well. And the reason I ended up joining sort of 12-ish months later, he joined, by the way, he's still a member as well. But the reason I joined, as as a young adult, was I realized I was getting through my education and there was going to become this period where I would have to communicate with people who were older than me, who were better spoken than me, who were smarter than me. And that was sort of the reason I joined to begin with, because Toastmasters is not made up of 18-year-olds. It's made up of people who have more experience speaking and in the world. And that was the reason I joined.
It's interesting that you started to go with your father. I started my Toastmasters journey by dragging my mother along to Toastmasters after I finished university and had done a speechcraft program in high school. But so I did the first 4 years of Toastmasters with my mum. So it was an interesting way of sharing time with the folks, that's for sure.
Cool.
So at what point in your Toastmasters journey did you join the second club? What drove that decision?
Oh, so again, like I've been a president, president of 5 clubs, which, oh my God, hearing that back. But I've been a member of many other clubs along the way until I settled on the 2 that I'm in now. It was just sort of like through a bit of Toastmasters network, I became aware there was another club starting sort of just down the road on the Gold Coast. And I got sort of invited along to that or what have you to help start that club. And I could sort of see the benefits of having a wider, I would say audience, certainly varied audience, but a wider group of people to give feedback and associate with and hang out with, just expanding the network. So I think that was probably 3 years into my Toastmasters career that I joined a second club. I was a member of 3 clubs, sort of all changing what those 3 clubs were for a long time. Again, just having a bigger network, different experiences, different clubs do things slightly differently. You hear from different people, you get to have conversations with different people. And, when you've got clubs that are in different areas or divisions, again, you've just at more sort of you're in more rooms. And that's just sort of always been the driver. I just love being a member of multiple clubs. It's, a once per week thing for me now rather than a once per fortnight as each of those clubs individually would have been.
And just on that, once a week for 13 or so years that you've been doing Toastmasters, do you think the consistency and just that going every week pretty much has contributed to you being a better speaker?
Without a doubt. I think that's the biggest strength Toastmasters has is consistency and momentum. Every member speaks at every meeting. So, in the workplace, it's really easy to speak reasonably infrequently, and depending what that workplace is. But the fact that you can turn up every fortnight and speak for somewhere between 2 minutes and 7 minutes, depending on what it is that you're doing, is huge. Has it made a difference to my life? I joined when I was 18, right? Like, and the people who are now doing the math that I've been a member for like 13, 14 years, I can't replay my life without Toastmasters, right? As tragic as that sounds. But I work in the communications and training space now. So it's pretty safe to say that had I not done Toastmasters and, I was doing a bit of speaking even before Toastmasters, I was an instructor in the Air Force cadets during my teenage years, right? So this sort of trajectory I've been on of speaking, it's absolutely shaped who I am and what I do now. Yeah.
I love that. It's amazing where it can take you and can take you to places where you would not ever have anticipated.
Yeah.
And so what have you enjoyed most about being a member? Obviously many facets to your Toastmasters journey, but where you're at now, what would you say you most enjoy about being a member?
Look, obviously in the first few years, there was a lot of just self-development, right? Which is learning to speak, learning to give feedback, learning to listen, organize thoughts, be concise in the way that I speak. And I think that's why most of us come to Toastmasters, is to be able to speak and share our thoughts when and whereby we want to. And so, I've obviously been around some time, and I've been fortunate that I've done, the area director thing and division director thing a few times. And so that meshes quite nicely, because in those roles, there's a bit more leadership goes on. There's a bit more education and passing on of knowledge, experience, information. And that's exactly what I do in my job as well, in my work. So what I take away from it now has evolved into using Toastmasters as this testing ground for how do I do bits and pieces at work. And the thing that gives me the most joy is that giving back. That's kind of just who I am a little bit, is helping other people or other members, other club leaders to have the same sort of advantage, opportunities, growth that I've been able to have over certainly those initial years, but just consistently ongoing, because there is always something else to try, a different angle to come at whichever project or role that you take on.
I think I first met you at one of the club officer training sessions, and I know that you've done phenomenal amounts of training in the district, certainly even just in the few years I've been in this district and seen you delivering training and creating resources. Yeah, how has that, I know that's one of the ways you sort of give back, but talk about the training aspect of that. Did that give you experience again for what you're now using in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two feed into each other, right? So, when you're training professionally, obviously there is stakes involved. Somebody is paying me to deliver a certain amount of stuff in a certain amount of time. And there is all sorts of different strategies for how to present information, how to be an adult educator, to do what it is that I need to do. But the stakes are higher, so there's less room for experimentation. And so that sort of raises questions for me that I can trial out and experiment in the Toastmasters space. And the joy of the Toastmasters space is it's very forgiving. Everybody wants to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more room in there to play around with things, because it is so forgiving and forces you as well, I think, to the big thing that Toastmasters forced me to do is to simplify knowledge into a way that can be delivered in a short amount of time. Because most of our training segments that we're given are 30 minutes to an hour, and it can be really difficult to get years and years of experience or a complex topic across in that time. So it's taught, how do you simplify that and take it straight across to work, which is, what are the strategies that I can use that help me to deliver on the promise that I make, well, when I put my other hat on, which is as a salesperson, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how those two worlds, like you're making it work for you, the experimenting in this very forgiving environment. Yeah, I mean, do you think the feedback mechanism that we have in Toastmasters, you talk about it being forgiving, has your experience been that the feedback has typically been helpful enough to make the changes you need to make to improve your speaking?
Generally, yes. And that is because more often than not, the person or the people who are evaluating you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think that's key. If you don't understand what somebody's trying to achieve and you're trying to give them feedback, it's going to miss the mark and they're not going to listen, right? And that more often than not happens because we're all in the same ecosystem of pushing in the same direction. So understanding what somebody's trying to achieve and how they want to receive the feedback. And obviously there's some great structures within Toastmasters of how to deliver that feedback. So that works really well. But the flip side to that as well is, like you and I, Melanie, have both had success in giving feedback through contests and what have you, and just a massive amount of delivering evaluations. And that gives you an analytical eye and ear. It gives you a skill in seeing in others what's worth commenting on, right? And how to go about that feedback structure. And the most important thing there is, yes, helping others, but also turning that eye and ear back on yourself. So I find when I'm delivering a thing, there's a self-debrief happens as well, right? If not also with somebody who I know understands what I'm trying to achieve and can deliver that feedback in a way that is useful to me. So again, the two just feed into each other constantly.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about evaluations and that self-reflection is we can be our own worst critics, which is great because I think to be able to turn that critical eye back on ourselves, but also to get that outside, external, helpful feedback from other people that are in a similar boat. It is certainly very helpful. So, yeah. All right. So what's been, you've obviously developed a lot of skills in speaking, but what would you say has been some of the most valuable skills you have learnt through Toastmasters, perhaps in the earlier stages and then in your later stages of your journey?
I mean, the later stages, like I said, I think is the constant training, is the constant, how do I share information in a way that works for people? In the early years, I forget who said it to me, but there was this idea about sort of focusing on one thing at a time. So in the Toastmasters world, there's about 50 things you could focus on, from leadership to impromptu speaking, but everything in speaking, everything in speeches, vocal variety and writing and what have you. And it was something about like focus on one thing at a time. And one of the first things I focused on was impromptu speaking. And that was largely fueled by the same reason that I joined. And understanding and focusing, I think I did it for like a year. I didn't really worry about my speeches too much, but I really focused on the impromptu speaking, which is, we play table topics in our club. You get a topic, you have no time to think about it, and then speak on it for up to 2 minutes. And that process, understanding how to organize your head in a way that you can speak in an impromptu fashion, because the reality is we do most of our speaking impromptu, right? This podcast recording, when my phone rings, when you meet somebody, right? It's impromptu. Interviews is the one that's usually kicked around the most. So understanding that there is a process there and how to sound articulate and answer in a sensible way was huge. And some of the big learning I think for me was oftentimes it's not about the 2 minutes, it's about what I call the 5 seconds of terror before. Like someone gives you the question or the table topic in our case, and it's what has to happen in those 5 seconds before you start speaking. That was the big learning early on for me, and again has shaped probably where I've landed. Like, I am the sales guy in our company, and I do a lot of delivery of content, workshops, feedback, conversations real time with people as well. So that was probably the biggest early learning for me. And I've focused on all sorts of things in the middle there as well, speaking, evaluating, storytelling, you name it. And now it's very much in that giving back space.
I think with table topics, and as you call it, the 5 seconds of terror before it all starts, it's one of the tips I heard quite recently was don't go with the first and obvious thought. And this was in relation to table topics competitions. So where we actually compete against other people and everyone is getting the same topic. And it's amazing. I just heard that advice at the right time just before the last competition I was in, and it proved to be I delivered a different speech than a lot of the other people in the room. And yeah, it's just you hear these little tips every now and then. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense. Just take that extra second or two to think beyond the obvious answer.
And it's helpful as well, right? Because, let's go with the obvious example of an interview. If somebody asks a question and you pause for a few seconds or you say, yeah, let me think on that for a moment, people respect that. They don't want their time wasted by somebody talking out of their ear at them. So, yeah, I've used that in topics contests as well. Go with the second thing that comes to your mind because it's just different to what everyone else did. It's a bit cheeky. Yeah. It works.
Absolutely. What are some of the projects, because I know you've done a lot of projects and the training projects and giving back and things like that, where you've done these really sizable projects for Toastmasters. Are there any of those that you want to have a chat about? I know you did one recently with your sprints and teaching clubs how to recruit new Toastmasters. What an amazing project that was. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we can. So I'm in the fortunate position that I'm the public relations manager this year, which looks after the public relations for the entire district, which is 150 odd clubs in Queensland and around. And one of the issues that was identified was before we do public relations, we need to make sure that guests who walk into clubs are treated, and there is treated in such a way, and there is a process in place that we as Toastmaster clubs have a reasonable success of converting those people into members, because we're a membership-driven organisation, the same as every other. We want members, and so that when we run some sort of public relations or marketing campaign, we know that those efforts are not in vain. And one of the other struggles as well with a lot of clubs is they're miles away from each other, right? We cover half of a continent down here. So, if I was to say, hey, look, we're going to run a publicity campaign here in Brisbane, well, immediately the people in Darwin and Townsville and Port Moresby aren't that big a fan of mine. So again, this wasn't, so the solution to this was the sprint. And this was an idea that came from my work. It came from my business coaches, my business mentors. They run a similar sort of thing. And I was like, I reckon I can adapt that. So yeah, I opened the floor to invite clubs to come along and say, hey, why don't I walk you through how to market your own club locally and have a reasonable chance of converting guests into members yourselves, right? So we can sort of decentralize the growth of the organization. And so that was a process. And I did one of the Pathways projects on that. It was, I think it's like manage projects successfully. So you run a big project, which I think running a sprint was. It was 4 online sessions. There was a website. There was a Facebook group. I presented it physically at the district leader training. There was marketing involved in it. And yeah, it was just saying to clubs, here, I'm going to give you the strategies to market, to convert, and to run great meetings. And at the end of it, they hold a showcase meeting. So I can direct a lot of marketing towards that. So that's just, a reasonably big project. We sat in the pub the other night with another Toastmaster friend. I think back of the napkin, we worked at like 50 hours. Like the level of tragic that I went to is phenomenal.
Dedication.
Yeah, service. Let's go with service. And it's like massive project that I'm fortunate to be able to give after all these years. So yeah, that sits within Pathways. There's a project I could mark off with that, and there was a couple of projects I could mark off with that as I went through. A lot of these clubs marked off projects. We grew 12 clubs by some handful of members. Yeah, I mean that's a big project. It's a long way from the icebreaker, but pretty cool. Pretty cool to get there.
Yeah, and it's interesting how looking at the pathways and the electives, that are within those projects gets you thinking about doing projects that you would otherwise probably never think about or be interested in running, and yet you're spending 50 hours in a volunteer capacity basically training other people how to market their clubs. It is not dissimilar to this podcast, which is one of my electives for a level 4 pathways project. But that's what I love about Toastmasters. It focuses you on projects that you can really get stuck into and become a really large body of work that you can actually point to and go, yeah, I did that. I created that. And I think for people that has, that stuff that can go into your resume, and it's stuff that employers would look at and go, wow, that's pretty impressive to do all of that in an unpaid volunteer capacity.
Yeah, and it's not about the thing, right? It's not about having a podcast. It's not about the effort of going to a podcast. It's not about like doing the sprint thing. It's about, like you say, you have a thing to point at and go, there's a thing I created. And it's like the result of the clubs being in the sprint. The feedback I got was overwhelmingly like, we feel confident to market our club and convert people. We feel confident. We have revitalized our club. It's like, that's the difference I'm looking for, right? And so that's the difference of putting 50 hours or 1 hour or however many hours into a project, is how it changes you as a person by the end of it. And what are the skills, whether that's 1 skill, 2 or 40 skills that you learn, what are the skills that I've learned that I can transfer and do something with as a result here, or, give back to somebody else? That's what I think it's about. I mean, I wouldn't put the 50 hours in for nothing, right? But there's certainly the sort of external motivation through Toastmasters to do that, but massive personal outcome as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm sure that when you started Toastmasters, you were probably not ever thinking you'd be running marketing training.
No, correct on that. I remember the first time I got asked to present at club officer training, and it was like the clouds had parted and a beam of light shot down, like what's happening here?
And did you find that in saying yes to those opportunities, because I can't imagine you saying no to many opportunities in Toastmasters, you just sort of seem to take everything on, like, yep, I'll do that, I'll handle it, I'll do it. Has it been that attitude of, yes, I'll do this, I'll challenge myself, I'll stretch myself? Do you think that has, continued to drive where you've gone in this organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I say yes quite strategically. I say no to a lot of things, but I'm always quite strategic about what I do and don't take on. I think there's sort of nothing worse than taking on a bunch of projects and sort of half delivering half of them. So I'm careful about that, And so this year I'm focused on helping clubs market. Last year I was focused on helping area directors do their thing. So just a different thing year on year. But certainly, I mean, the big thing to learn, I think, is, when you get asked to do something for club officer training or stand to do, my first ever club officer role was sergeant at arms, or get asked to do whatever it is, there is always support. There is always support, whether it is offered onto you or whether you need to ask very quietly for it. And everybody wants to see you succeed. Even the district leadership roles I have, success of multiple clubs hinges on me doing a good job, which means many, many people are quite invested in me doing that good job and will offer the help when and whereby I need it. So, yeah, nothing wrong with saying yes. I mean, what's the worst that happens? Right? It's not a pay cut. I don't know what the worst is that happens. It's not a pay cut, is the point.
Volunteer organisation, right? But yeah, it is certainly very supportive. And I think the range of skill sets that can and are available to learn, there's the leadership aspect of it, there's the marketing aspect, there's so many transferable skills, I think, that go well and truly beyond just stepping in the front door of your first Toastmasters club and conquering the fear of public speaking, which is probably why most people start. And then this whole world opens up to them. So,
but that's the important thing, right? Is the fear of public speaking and what that's holding you back from. And you don't know. You just don't know. And it's just like, oh, I can speak. Oh, cool. Maybe now I can lead. Maybe now I can train. Maybe now I can learn to sell. Maybe now I can learn to market. And I kind of look at so many, like I run my own business, run a company here. And so there's so many skills I'm looking at, which is like, how does that transfer to running a successful company for whatever measure that is. But it has to start somewhere, and it starts with the beat the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you've beaten the fear of public speaking, it just becomes it's like, "Ooh, yeah, I can do that." And I think it just helps you to become more confident in trying other things, and
Yep.
it changes your mindset about, oh, okay, the ground isn't going to swallow me up whole when I'm speaking in front of a group. It might not swallow me up whole when I try something else that's different and new. So
yeah, I can do hard things is
yeah,
a pretty cool
absolutely.
place to land.
Absolutely. And so along those lines, what would you say to people out there who might have heard about Toastmasters but are mildly terrified about actually setting foot in a club?
We've all been there, right? Everybody in this organization was once somewhat concerned or anxious or terrified about speaking to a group, and get along to a local club. You don't have to speak, you don't have to participate, you don't have to do anything. You just have to go and check it out and see that there are people there on a huge continuum from giving their first speech and being pretty nervous about it, and that's the most difficult speech anyone will ever give, all the way through to absolute lunatics like myself who are happy to speak and doing other things. But again, you don't know what's on the other side of being able to communicate your thoughts and ideas when and whereby you want to. So give it a go. Go to one or two meetings and make an honest judgment for yourself if it can fit into your life.
Yeah, for sure. It is really just a case of just doing it. But we often hear of people who procrastinate, and you see it especially in the vice president publicity role when you are interacting with people and guests who say they're going to come along and then they don't, and then you follow them up and like, yeah, I want to come, and things keep getting in the way. But again, I think it's that fear of just overcoming that fear. And once they do it, makes such a difference.
That's it. Yeah. You just got to do it, right? There's always an excuse, but like I always say, try and find a way to make it work rather than excuses. There's clubs meet all nights of the week and in all sorts of locations. There'll be one.
Absolutely. Online, in person, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
And so you talked about each year you have a focus. What are you going to focus on for next year, 2024?
Yeah, next year. I already have my roles planned out. So this year I'm public relations manager. Next year I'll be working on training our district leaders in a shared role as the training manager, which is a very significant role, but I'm super excited for it, and I think I can make a bit of a difference there, and that'll be the focus. I'm sure there'll be many learnings ahead of me that I can't even see yet.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great that you've got that mapped out and a big new challenge to get stuck into. It's always good to stretch yourself. And again, that's another thing about this organization. There's no shortage of opportunities to keep stretching yourself in one direction or the other. And yeah, it really can, this organization can, or you grow with it, or you grow. There's so many ways to grow, which is great.
Yeah, grow with it and grow it so that it fits you. And we're always looking for people to help out. It's like any membership organization at the moment. You'll be asked, don't worry.
No doubt.
I'm the wrong person. I'm the wrong person to say the challenge is saying no.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think as well, because the people that approach you to do the jobs are so enthusiastic about it, and there is this sense of wanting to give back. I think that's the nature of this organization. So it definitely can be hard to say no.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you specifically want to talk about that you want people to know about Toastmasters, or any misconceptions they might have about the organization?
We don't make toasts generally, but as I've said before, is the best time to join. Is to paraphrase another saying, like the best time to join was last year. The second best time is now. Get along and check it out. The amount of people, and it breaks my heart a little bit, that will walk into our club and they're of a certain age, and they'll just say, "Oh, I wish I joined 10 years ago." somebody walks in who's like freshly retired and has time and go, oh, wish I knew this at the start of my career.
Yeah.
Back when you could apply it, right? Which is a little bit heartbreaking. So if you've listened to a podcast which has the word Toastmasters in the name, you're probably the right person to check it out.
Absolutely. And I think you raise an interesting point about almost the age at which people join. And I know in our clubs, at one point we had one 18-year-old member, but we don't have a lot of 18-year-olds, 18 to say 25-year-olds. And I think that is an opportunity for this organization. There's so much scope if people that age got in, as you say, got in early and used that as a platform to really support their career in the early years. It would make so much of a difference to their whole career.
And I totally get there's a cost associated with being a member of anything ever, us included. I don't think it's a high price. It's a couple of $100 per year, right? But the alternative isn't great. Either you live with a fear, or it's many thousands of dollars to do some course, or you have to wait for your work to put you into some sort of PD program. Get onto it and get ahead.
Yeah, and I think as well it's worth asking your employer if they would fund membership, because it's very much a work-related expense. I know I can claim it through, my tax, and this year my employer is probably likely to pay as part of a personal development fund that we get. So I think it's worth asking if your employer would do that, because as you say, it's a couple $100 a year. It's not a massive cost. It's one of the, I think, best value personal and professional development programs available for the quality you get and the resources you get.
Yeah, and it's ongoing, right? Like it's not a 2-day course, which I don't know if a 2-day course it's going to give you the confidence to do speaking, but it's ongoing, and the momentum, right? Like we said, you'll speak every week or every fortnight in front of a kind group who will give you feedback in the best way possible. And it doesn't matter if you do a terrible job of some speech. No one's going to knock a zero off your pay. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a safe place to play and fail. All righty. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience of your journey. It's great to hear where Toastmasters has taken you. It really seems to have opened up a lot of opportunities, and you've taken those opportunities by the horns and really throwing yourself into it. And I think, you make a massive contribution to the division and the district, certainly from what I've seen. So, thank you for everything you do and for the inspiration you provide us at a club level and a district and division level. It's inspirational to watch, Thomas. So thank you very much.
Very kind. Thank you. I'm always happy to help.
All right. Well, I hope you have an awesome 2024.
Yes, likewise. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you.
If you're ready to unlock your potential, consider joining a Toastmasters club near you. Check out the Find a Club link on the Toastmasters International website at www.toastmasters.org. It's worth visiting a couple of different clubs as a guest to see which club best suits you. If you do take the leap and visit a meeting, I would absolutely love to hear your experience. Feel free to message me at talkativetoastmaster@gmail.com or tag me in the comments if you found this podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Thanks for listening to today's show. Head to talkativetoastmaster.com where you'll find the show notes for this and all other episodes, as well as links to some awesome Toastmasters resources. If you found value in today's content, I'd really appreciate if you could share it with friends and colleagues who may be interested, or leave a review on iTunes. This helps more people to find us. Until next time, remember the words of Roger Love. All speaking is public speaking, whether it's to one person or 1,000. Have a great week.